The movie begins with a tense and luxurious poolside scene at a lavish estate, where two wealthy businessmen are having a relaxing afternoon swim. Several bodyguards are present, carefully observing the two men from a distance. Suddenly, a gunshot pierces the air, shattering the tranquility of the moment. The bodyguards spring into action with lightning-fast reflexes, diving into the water and using a large white blanket as a makeshift shield to protect the businessmen from potential harm. Amidst the chaos, John Chung, also known as Alan Hui Qingyang, emerges. He is an exceptional bodyguard renowned for his unmatched skills. Swiftly identifying the source of the gunshot, he takes down the assassins associated with the threat. John manages to hold on to one of the businessmen, protecting him as they move away from the scene. However, a car suddenly appears in front of them, and a man claiming to be a bodyguard steps out, instructing John to let the businessman enter the car. John refuses and instead pushes the imposter into the car. As the car starts moving forward, it explodes. The movie then fast-forwards to a lecture room, where John, now in his soldier uniform, and his colleagues are watching the movie scene. The commander pauses the movie and questions John about why he pointed a gun at the man he was assigned to protect. John stands up and explains to his commander. Though the commander is a little furious, he decides to let the matter go. After the lecture, the commander approaches John and told him that a wealthy Hong Kong businessman, James, wants to hire him to protect his beautiful girlfriend Michelle Leung. John accepted the offer and later learned that Michelle Leung is the only surviving witness to a murder. The other witnesses who saw the murder were eliminated one by one in various ways. As he delved deeper into the details, he discovered that Michelle escaped an assassination attempt once when she wanted to take a bath. She discovered that the water was filled with electric shock when a cat jumped into the water. The following day, John arrives at the girl's residence in Hong Kong, where he meets two plainclothes police officers named Fat Po and Ken, who are responsible for her safety. After meeting Miss Michelle Leung, he quickly discovers that the current bodyguards are somewhat incompetent. During what he believes to be an assassination attempt, John defeats the entire team of bodyguards in a fight, showcasing their incapability. As a result, they are all dismissed from their positions, and Fat Po pays them their wages, informing them that their services are no longer needed. Later at night, John walks around the house, conducting a security check. However, as he approaches Miss Leung's room, he asks her to open the door for a security check, but she refuses. Suddenly, John uses a pin to open her door, which surprises Miss Leung. Upon entering the room, Miss Leung orders him to get out, but John refuses and insists on giving her instructions for her safety. Despite Miss Leung's plea for privacy, John doesn't listen and continues to give her instructions. He then takes her body creams away and replaces them with creams he bought, but Miss Leung insists that she doesn't want the new cream and asks him to leave, emphasizing her need for privacy. However, John tells her that her privacy is not his concern, and he is there solely for her safety. Then, John starts installing security cameras in her room, which prompts Miss Leung to question him. She goes downstairs, takes a frying pan, and when John finishes installing the camera and prepares to leave, she uses the frying pan to destroy the camera. Despite this, John remains undeterred and gives her an electronic amulet, instructing her to always wear it and press the button to signal him whenever she is in trouble. He then leaves the room, and Miss Leung slams the door aggressively. In the next day, John was seen inspecting Miss Leung's entire car to check for any bombs. Before Miss Leung, who was prepared for her teaching activities, wanted to enter her car to go to school, she found Fat Po sitting in her car. When she asked why he was sitting in her car, Fat Po told her that he was instructed by his hotshot professional bodyguard. She sighed and entered the car where John was already sitting. During their way to Mr. Leung's school, hitmen attempted to assassinate her but failed due to John's strategy of having a decoy VIP car driven by Fat Po and the girl riding with him in the trailing van. While she was at school, Miss Leung learned that John had asked the principal to grant her a 2-week leave from the school. Miss Leung became angry and reported everything about to her boyfriend, James. James decided to talk to John, asking him to ease up on Miss Leung. However, John responded by questioning why he should ease up and added that it is the job of a defender to protect the person they are assigned to. After the conversation with John, James told Michelle Leung that if John didn't ease up on her, she should inform him so that he can arrange for a new bodyguard for her. Meanwhile, Fat Pa and Ken were outside, watching a horse racing game. They both bet on separate teams, and the team Ken bet on eventually won the match, while Fat Pa's chosen team lost. Feeling sad about his loss, Fat Pa admitted to Ken that he had bet not only his money but also Ken's money on the losing team. Furious, Ken grabbed Fat Pa by his shirt and demanded that he pay back the money he had lost. However, Fat Pa claimed he didn't have any money with him at the moment. As the conversation between Fat Pa and Ken continued, John, who was watching Michelle swim in the pool, overheard them. Feeling conflicted, Ken left Fat Pa and went inside the house. When night fell, the electronic amulet that John had given Michelle got activated. Thinking it was Michelle calling him, John rushed to her room, only to find Michelle taking a shower in the bathroom, and the amulet had activated accidentally. Concerned, Michelle opened the bathroom glass door to check what was happening, only to discover John in her room. She asked him to leave her room, but instead, John pushed her head back into the bathroom. While leaving, Ken rushed into Michelle's room because he heard the commotion, but John pulled him back. When Ken tried to enter her room again, John pointed a gun at him without saying a word, indicating that he had already checked her room and everything was resolved. Ken then left and returned to his room. Meanwhile, the assassin who murdered a wealthy businessman was on a phone call with one of his bodyguards, inquiring why they haven't killed Michelle yet. The bodyguard explained that there was another bodyguard protecting Michelle, making it difficult for them to get close to her. The assassin became angry and ordered the bodyguard to find a way to kill her because his court case is tomorrow. During the night, Michelle tried to get away from her bodyguard by sneaking out through the window. However, she was caught by the younger officer, Ken. When Ken asked her where she was going in the middle of the night, Michelle lied, saying that she wanted to go and see her grandmother. Surprisingly, Ken agreed to accompany her, and they both got into Michelle's car. As Ken turned on the car's light, John made himself visible in the car's headlights. John approached the car door and questioned Michelle about what she was doing. Michelle stepped out of the car and told John that she was going to see her mother. John objected, criticizing her attire and suggesting that she was actually going to a party at a friend's house. Michelle became angry and asked why he was going through her personal stuff, insisting on her right to privacy. An argument ensued, during which John handed her a handkerchief to wipe her tears when she started crying. On her way back to the house, she turned and said that John would never make her cry again. The next day, Michelle, Fat Pa, and John were preparing to go to court so that Michelle could testify against the assassin. John told Michelle that after she testifies in court, his contract of protecting her will be over, and he will go back to Beijing. Michelle and John shook hands as John told her that he would see her again, but Michelle said that wouldn't happen. As they were about to leave the house, Ken came in with shocking news and told them that the court case had just been postponed, which made Michelle and John unhappy. Back in the house, Michelle was talking to her boyfriend on the phone, and John was sitting on a chair, eavesdropping on Michelle's conversation with James, her boyfriend. As the conversation went on, Michelle talked about John, blaming him for everything. Later on, Michelle insisted that she wanted to go to the mall alone, and John should not follow her, to which he agreed. On her way to the mall, Michelle was accompanied by Fat Pa and Ken. Billy, Michelle's younger brother, agreed to come with them. On their way to the mall, Billy and Michelle were discussing what they would do at the mall. When they arrived at the mall, unbeknownst to them, there were assassins everywhere, on the lookout for Michelle. However, Ken noticed their presence. Meanwhile, Billy brought popcorn for Michelle, which she gave to Fat Pa and Ken to taste and check if it was safe to eat. Both of them ate the popcorn and told her it was safe. Billy then told Michelle that he would go to the arcade to play games, to which Michelle agreed, encouraging him to win a lot of prizes. Fat Pa decided to go with Billy, and Ken went with Michelle to the clothing stores. On their way to the arcade, Fat Pa stopped to place a bet on a game, while Billy, holding a water pistol, ran into his friends who were also holding fake guns. One of his friends insisted that Billy couldn't show them a real gun, which Billy claimed he could. He went back to where Fat Pa was and took Fat Pa's gun, and when Fat Pa caught him, he claimed the gun had fallen down. Billy gave Fat Pa back his gun, but unbeknownst to Fat Pa, Billy had switched the gun, giving Fat Pa the fake gun and carrying the real gun to show his friends. He explained that the gun was real, but they didn't believe him. Meanwhile, Michelle and Ken reached the clothing store, and Michelle found a cloth she liked. She took the cloth and entered the dressing room to check if it fit her. Unbeknownst to her, there was an assassin in the next dressing room. The assassin brought out his silencer and attempted to shoot Michelle through the stall partition. Unknown to the assassin, John was in the other dressing room. John quickly brought out his gun and shot the assassin before he could harm Michelle. After witnessing the incident, Michelle screamed, and John grabbed her, telling her that coming to the mall was a bad idea. Meanwhile, despite Billy's explanation that the gun was real, his friends told him he was lying. One of his friends attempted to try the gun on Billy by pointing it at him, but Billy insisted that the gun was real and that there were bullets in it. The other friend told the one holding the gun to try it on him, as he was not afraid, but Billy pleaded with them to stop. Just as the friend holding the gun was about to pull the trigger, a man hit the boy on the head, causing him to nearly fall, and the bullet from the gun came out. Upon hearing the sound of the gun, people in the mall began to shout and started running to the exits to escape from the mall. Billy, who was on the ground with his friends, collected the gun from his friend's hand and ran to Fat Pa to give it back. However, John took out multiple hitmen while protecting Michelle. Eventually, he realized that all the hitmen had 2 pens in their front pockets for identification and decided to pose as one of them to take more out. Outside the mall, as John and Michelle were leaving, one of the assassins, disguised as a police officer, attacked them. Luckily, Fat Pa arrived just in time and instructed John to take Michelle to safety while he dealt with the situation. When Fat Pa tried to fire at the assassin, Billy appeared and threw the real gun to him, insisting that it was his gun. However, Fat Pa didn't listen and kicked the gun Billy threw at him. But to their surprise, they discovered the gun was fake. The assassin took advantage of the situation and shot at Fat Pa first, catching him off guard. Realizing he was holding a fake gun, Fat Pa couldn't defend himself, and the assassin fired at him a second time. Billy witnessed this and broke down in tears. As the scene unfolded, John, who was in the car with Michelle, arrived on the scene and killed the assassin just in time to save them. Billy ran to Fat Pa, crying, as his body lay on the floor. Fat Pa managed to speak to him, assuring him that he was okay before being rushed to the hospital for medical attention. The scene then shifts to Billy crying at home while Alan was treating the injury Michelle had during the mall attack. After John bandaged her injuries, she thanked him. Alan then went to Billy, who was sitting upstairs and crying. On reaching there, John asked Billy why he was crying. Billy, sitting on the floor, said he is sorry. John asked him for what, and then asked if it was because he took Fat Pa's gun, which led to his injury during the mall attack. Then John sat close to Billy and told him his story from when he was a child. As he was telling his story, Michelle was listening to them. After telling Billy his story, John stood up and left. As he was going, Michelle stopped John and told him that she had heard his story and what she learned from it was how to apologize. John turned around, smiled at her, and then left. Then the movie shifts to Wong, a former Chinese soldier, dragging a security man who works at a hospital on the floor. Wong insists that the security man show him where his brother's corpse is, the one who Alan shot during the mall attack. After obtaining his brother's corpse from the hospital, more security men try to stop Wong. However, being a trained soldier, he beats all the guards and escapes with his brother's body. While performing a burial ritual for his brother, he swears to seek revenge for his death. Next, John goes to the hospital where Wong had earlier attacked, accompanied by Fat Pa, who has fully recovered from his injuries, to look for clues about Wong's whereabouts. When they arrive, the doctor informs them about the incident. Upon hearing this, John provides the doctor with information about the weapon the assassin used to kill the guards, and the doctor thanks him before John and Fat Pa leave the hospital. Back at home, John, Fat Pa, Michelle, and Ken search for details about Wong's location. Michelle, who is gradually becoming attracted to John, asks if they will find him, and Ken assures her that they will. Later on, Ken and other policemen go to where Wong was last seen and discover that he is no longer there. Before leaving the location, Ken notices John and Michelle's picture on the wall with a red cross on them. Then the scene shifted to John repairing a broken camera outside the house with a ladder in the rain. As he was fixing the camera, Michelle, who is deeply attracted to John, walked over with an umbrella and placed it over his head. Surprised, he thanked her and asked why she was doing it, but Michelle didn't say anything. While John continued his work, Michelle tried to engage him in conversation about his family and siblings, but John remained silent. Failing to make John talk, she pretended to fall from the ladder, but John quickly caught her, and Michelle seemed happy, telling him not to let her go. Gradually, John brought Michelle down from the ladder, and the two started to chat. During their conversation, John noticed Wong hiding in a bush surrounding their home and ran after him. As John chased Wong, Wong managed to escape. However, John came across a man tied to a tree with a bomb planted nearby. Despite his efforts to help, the bomb exploded, killing the man. When John returned home, he informed Fat Pa that they needed to install bulletproof windows all over the house because the assassin now knew where Michelle lived. As night fell, John did his routine checkup in Michelle's room. During the process, Michelle received a call from her boyfriend, James, who told her that he had found a new bodyguard for her. Michelle refused and said she wanted to keep John and hung up the call. The next day was Michelle's birthday, and James came to her house to celebrate. Outside, James suggested taking Michelle out to dinner, and they were accompanied by John and Michelle's younger brother. When night falls, Billy, who is already aware that his sister is in love with John, switches off the lights in the house and bids John goodnight. As Billy leaves, John begins his security checkup, using his security device to ensure everything is in order in the house. While going through the device, he notices Michelle standing behind him. Becoming confused, John wonders what Michelle is doing at this time of night. As Michelle approaches John, he continues to act as if he is unaware of her presence, pretending to fiddle with the device randomly. As Michelle gets closer to him, John stands up from where he is sitting and accidentally bumps into her. John asks her what she is doing here. She replies that she is here to give him a wristwatch, which she takes out from a box and fixes on John's hand, asking if it looks beautiful. John thanks her and leaves for his room. As Michelle goes to her room, she turns back and tells John that after his contract is done, she will see him again, to which John replies that he doubts it. She laughed and went back to her room, bidding John goodnight. As she entered her room, Michelle switched off the lights, making it dark. Alan went back to his duties post, but suddenly, the electronic amulet that Alan gave her began to make noise. Concerned for her safety, Alan stormed into the bedroom to protect her. When Alan entered her room, she closed the door behind him, revealing that she had pressed the transmitter purposely to get Alan's attention. Alone together, Michelle grabbed Alan's hand and confessed that she is in love with him. Alan was surprised by her revelation. Michelle moved closer to Alan, trying to create a romantic atmosphere. She asked Alan to kiss her, but he refused and left her room to continue his duties, leaving her panting behind the door. John went outside the house and sat close to a swimming pool, eating before Fat Pa met him. Both of them had conversations about their lives. Again, the transmitter began to beep, but this time, John didn't go to Michelle. Fat Pa questioned why he didn't go, and John explained everything to him. Fat Pa then insisted that he should go talk to Michelle because he noticed that John was in love with her too. But unknown to them, Wong and his gang had invaded the house. Ken, who was inside the house, engaged the assassins in a gun battle, but he was shot in the arm while trying to protect Michelle and his brother Billy. This got John and Fat Pa's attention, who were outside the house. While Ken kept fighting and trying to bring Michelle and Billy to safety, he was shot by Wong. Ken received several bullets from Wong as he protected Michelle and Billy from harm. Fat Pa quickly got into the house and began to shoot the assassins, grabbing the dying Ken in his arms and telling him to hold on. Suddenly, John appeared through the back door and started shooting at the assassins, killing a lot of them. John and Wong then came face to face, and Wong told him that he would die for killing his brother, and both of them engaged in a gun duel. During the fight, John switched off the lights in the house, giving him the opportunity to kill more of the assassins by throwing a torch towards their direction and killing them as the torch passed the assassins. But his plan was stopped by Wong, who shot the torch out of John's hands. As Ken was dying in Fat Pa's arms and was surrounded by Michelle and Billy, who were crying, he told Fat Pa to use his money to bet on a game and told him the team to bet on. But Fat Pa told him to forget about it and promised him that he would avenge his death. When the room fell silent and dark, Billy's light shoe began to illuminate, alerting Wong to where he was hiding. Wong quickly showed his leg, and John used the opportunity to strike Wong's arm. Billy groaned in pain, and Michelle covered his injured leg with a torn piece of cloth. John utilized his firearm and martial skills, darkening the room, and cunningly took out all the assailants. When Fat Pa approached Wong with Ken's lifeless body on a chair, Wong stopped the chair with his leg and beat Fat Pa to a stupor. John managed to kill all the assailants, leaving only Wong remaining. They engaged in a long and intense fight, complicated by leaking gas that threatened to black out both of them. Eventually, Wong recovered a pistol and took Michelle hostage. Just as Wong backed away, James arrived unawares and attempted to dissuade Wong from shooting by offering him money, but Wong refused. Seizing the opportunity, John shielded Michelle with his body and took 2 shots but managed to pull out a bayonet, with which he had been previously wounded, from his chest and threw it towards Wong's neck, killing him. Before the movie concludes, James takes Michelle to the border between Hong Kong and mainland China. She desperately wants to see John one last time before he returns to China. Unfortunately, the checkpoint guards refuse them entry into the mainland. Nevertheless, John leaves Michelle a box that once held the watch she had gifted him, despite his attempts to decline it. To her surprise, when she opens the box, it contains John's own watch. At the same time, Fat Pa receives the money John intended to pay him, using it to fund his son's school tuition. As John's car drives away from the border and back into the mainland, Michelle cries out his name. Here the movie ends. Hope you enjoy recap. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you in my next video.